What's up everyone? Alex here. Whenever you think about game feel, that is, this intangible tactile sensation you experience when playing video games, you generally think about games with a lot of action, like say Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. But what if I told you that this applies to every game, including turn-based and tactical Japanese RPGs? I was thinking about this a ton recently, and that's probably because I've been watching a lot of Sakurai's videos. And this blend of clever visual and sound design, input, and responsiveness really goes a long way to subconsciously affect your hours-long experience with games in this genre. It also does this neat thing where it tricks you into thinking that you're playing an action game, even though you're not. This might sound like some made-up mumbo-jumbo, but I'm hoping that when I share with you my top 5 Japanese RPGs with really satisfying game feel, that you'll understand what I'm talking about, and perhaps make you want to rush into battle in these games at every given opportunity. So let's begin. Number 5. Atelier Sophie 2. This might sound strange because it's a newer title, but when I compare Atelier Sophie 2 to older Atelier games, the combat in Atelier Sophie 2 has barely any breaks in between commands, meaning as soon as one command hits, the action plays, and immediately you have control over your character. That might sound like common sense in a lot of the time, but I've thought about this a lot, especially given how there's generally like that slight pause in between seeing actions and then getting commands. That little sliver of seconds there makes a ton of difference when it comes to feeling the responsiveness of a game's combat system. And actually, Atelier Sophie 2 nails it in that department. Getting in and out of combat is also a smooth transition, barely taking any time at all. Like, I remember playing this game for review and just running into battle left and right because it felt so satisfying to be able to just jump into battle, finish the combat really quick, and just get out and run back into another battle. It just felt really good. And once you input a command, the animations play without hesitation, moving the action along really quickly. There's something to be said about the length of these animations as well, because it's just long enough that it delivers the kind of impact that it's intended to make without making it overly too long. Heaven forbid, we've all seen how long summon animations are in PS1 Final Fantasy games. And you couldn't cancel those in some of the games too. But with Atelier Sophie 2, it's just right. Number 4. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I want to point out that this is the only tactical RPG on this list. And yes, I'm very much aware of how the game represents both the aliens and its Sentinels. It uses a very minimalist style, so it's not really robots, it's more like little obscure kind of sprites that's just going in and out of the battlefield, and also aliens with multiple layers of sprite patterns and stuff. But it's because of this choice, this minimalist style, that it's able to really populate the screen with a ton of enemies, which is a lot more than other games, including other tactical games. So we're talking like almost to the ludicrous levels of enemies in top-down or side-scrolling shooters, especially when you start seeing bullets fly. It's really overwhelming. But despite that though, defeating all of these enemies, whether it's just one big enemy or a whole ton of them that's just littering the screen, just feels like you're popping popcorn, especially with how the explosions are animated. It kind of comes from this like middle part and it kind of blossoms into this really satisfying feeling of explosion. And the attacks that you dish out feel super powerful as well, because it also pauses the combat and shows you the impact area where you're unleashing your ultra powerful attacks. It really is larger than life. Like, yes, you're in control of these 13 Sentinels, but the amount of damage that they can dish out, it's like really overwhelming. The sound effects are really satisfying too, as every explosion and attack has this deep rumbling sensation that mimics the feeling of tanks firing in the distance. So overall, it's like quite the tour de force from both a visual and audio standpoint. And it helps that actually controlling the Sentinels feels really good as well. Number 3. Final Fantasy X. Admittedly, this is probably the first game where I actually noticed game feel in RPGs. And particularly because when you choose a command, your party members just outright run towards enemies and attack them. And just seeing them physically run towards them or attack from afar really added some impact to each attack. Like right now, even as I record this, I still have fond memories of Waka throwing his blitzball at airborne enemies, and I can still remember the impact of that ball. It's that powerful. There's also other commands that feel fast as well outside of the magic and attacks, like switching party members from the reserve to the front line that happens really quickly. That being said, it's a number 3 because it doesn't get in and out of battle fast enough, but when you are in the thick of battle, it just feels super responsive and satisfying. Definitely one of my favorite Japanese RPGs with game feel, because just getting your turns and alternating turns between yourself and the enemies just feels really, really good. Number 2, Trails from Zero. This probably applies to any of the previous Trails games, and by that I mean Sky and Crossbell, that have high-speed modes, but we're going to be talking about my experience with Trails from Zero specifically. Truthfully, the high-speed mode really gets you in and out of combat quickly, and finish grindy battles fast. But outside of high-speed mode, controlling the characters feel very responsive, meaning once you execute a command, whether you're attacking or moving, the animations that play are really fast and snappy, accompanied by sound effects that really sound satisfying. But that's not enough though, because the power that they convey behind their attacks actually goes a long way into making you feel powerful, whether it's a regular arts, craft, S-craft, or a team attack. And as you can imagine, this is achieved through a synergy of excellent visual effects and sound. Now keep in mind, compared to other games on this list, much of Trails from Zero is comprised of sprite-based art, which kind of tells you that game feel is practically everywhere, regardless of the kind of game or presentation it does. However, this next one is pretty obvious. Number 1, Persona 5/Royal. If you played Persona 5 Royal, this is the definition of game feel in Japanese RPGs. The fact that each command is mapped to a single button, and keep in mind, there are other games that have this, right? Like the Cold Steel series later on has this, but it didn't have the same snappiness that Persona 5 Royal has, especially when you just hit that one button and then the menu just beautifully unveils itself in front of you, and all of these kinds of pieces of information are displayed in not just like a haphazard fashion, but arranged in a way that is easy to understand and easy to act upon. In fact, that's actually one thing that we haven't talked about in any of the previous 4, is how the information is actually displayed. Persona 5 does it so well that a lot of people just kind of chalk it up as being aesthetically pleasing, but there's so much more to it than that. The snappiness of the animations is so measured in this game that when you send your Phantom Thieves to actually attack, the amount of time between the beginning of the animation and the end and until the next character jumps, it's meticulously planned like a martial arts choreography. Like, they're very well aware of how long battles can take in JRPGs, and so they literally are here making it fast, making it feel snappy, and again, making it almost feel like an action game because of how much things are moving on screen. The combat transitions are very smooth, whether it's going into combat or out, and there's multiple versions of that as well, especially when you're getting out. It's so cool. It's so well thought out. And I've already talked about this at length just now, but the visual effects are so dazzling, mixed in with like some really incredible sound design that just makes you want to run into battle as much as you can. And you'll need it because there's a ton of enemies that's roaming these palaces. And I've said it once and I'll say it again, Persona 5 Royal definitively is the game that has the best game feel for me when it comes to turn-based combat. And that, my friends, are 5 Japanese RPGs I've played with satisfying game feel. I've no doubt that you played some with great game feel as well, so think back on it and post your list in the comments below. And if you can't think of turn-based or tactical Japanese RPGs that have this, tell me your favorite action JRPGs that have fast and frenetic combat. Either way, post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.